The Horror Doll. The old farmhouse had been sitting in silence for decades, its windows covered in grime and its walls whispering secrets of a time long gone. A young couple, Alice and John, stumbled upon the property during a road trip. Alice, fascinated by antiques and vintage aesthetics, saw potential in the weathered house, convincing John they could restore it. Against their better judgment, they decided to make it their new home. During the initial cleanup, Alice found a room sealed off by nailed planks. Curiosity overtook caution as she pried the boards loose, revealing a small, dusty nursery. The air in the room was heavier than the rest of the house, as though time had stopped within its walls. A single item sat undisturbed on the rocking chair, a porcelain doll with hauntingly lifelike eyes. "Look at this," Alice said, picking it up despite John's unease. The doll's face was cracked in places, its smile frozen in an unsettling expression. "It's beautiful in a creepy way." John shuddered. "It's creepy, all right. Maybe we should toss it." But Alice insisted on keeping it, setting it on a shelf in the living room as part of the house's vintage charm. That night, as they lay in bed, the quiet of the farmhouse was broken by faint creaking. It sounded like footsteps, soft, deliberate, and unrelenting. John sat up, his heart pounding. "Did you hear that?" Alice brushed it off, attributing it to the old house settling. But the unease lingered as the noises continued. The next morning, the doll was no longer on the shelf. Alice found it sitting upright on the dining table, its head slightly tilted as if observing them. "I didn't put it there," Alice said, her voice wavering. "Neither did I," John replied, his face pale. As days turned into weeks, strange occurrences became frequent. Doors slammed on their own, whispers echoed in empty rooms, and shadowy figures flickered at the edge of their vision. The doll seemed to move when no one was looking. Its lifelike eyes followed them no matter where they stood. One night, John woke to find Alice standing in the corner of their bedroom, staring at the wall. Her head turned slowly, her eyes wide and unblinking. "She doesn't like you," Alice whispered in a voice that wasn't her own. John leapt out of bed, shaking her awake. Alice had no memory of the incident, but the terror in John's eyes was enough to convince her something was terribly wrong. Desperate for answers, they sought out the local historian. The old man's expression darkened when they mentioned the farmhouse. He told them of the previous owners, a young couple who had lost their only child under mysterious circumstances. The doll had belonged to the child, and after her death, the parents claimed it had become possessed. They sealed the nursery and left the house, never to return. "You need to leave," the historian warned. "That doll is not a toy. It's a conduit."
But leaving wasn't as simple as packing their bags. The moment they tried to leave, the doll appeared in their car, its head jerking unnaturally to face them. The engine wouldn't start, and the farmhouse doors slammed shut as if the house itself was alive. That night, the doll's presence became undeniable. Alice woke to the sound of a child's laughter echoing through the halls. When she turned on the bedside lamp, the doll was sitting at the foot of their bed, its cracked porcelain face inches from her own. John grabbed the doll and threw it into the fireplace, the flames roaring unnaturally high. But instead of burning, the doll emerged unscathed, its smile now more sinister. The house shook, and an inhuman scream filled the air. Realizing they couldn't fight it alone, they contacted a priest. The priest arrived with holy water and a prayer book, his demeanor grave. As he began the ritual, the house resisted violently. Objects flew across the room, the walls wept dark, sticky liquid, and the doll levitated, its lifeless eyes now glowing. The priest fought to banish the spirit, his voice unwavering even as the air grew icy and the room filled with a deafening roar. After hours of relentless prayer, the doll collapsed onto the floor, lifeless and still. Believing the nightmare to be over, Alice and John left the house. Never looking back, the farmhouse was boarded up once again, left to rot under the weight of its dark history. But miles away, in a second-hand shop, the porcelain doll sat on a dusty shelf, waiting for its next owner.